Hello and welcome to Health Matters on Channels Television. Thanks for staying with us. I am Mary Alale Yusuf. Heavy rainfall and the collapse of a dam in Borno State have caused flooding, which has damaged homes and other critical infrastructure and affected 40% of farmlands in the state. Several people have lost their lives and over 400,000 have been displaced. Similar disasters have taken place across other northern Nigeria states like Kaduna, Jigawa, Bauchi, and Taraba states. In fact, 47 people died from flood-related causes in Kano State. The Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, is saying the rains are not yet over in the north, and the southwest of the country should expect a second peak of rainfall before the end of the year. Some of this devastation is being blamed on climate change and human behavior. Joining me from our Abuja studio to examine the health impact of these disasters is virologist and Executive Director, Global Health and Infectious Diseases Control Institute in Nasarawa State University, KEFI. Dr. Akiala Ishaku, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mary, for having me. Good afternoon, viewers.
We usually hear a lot of talk and fear that, there might be cholera whenever there's a flood. But cholera isn't the only thing we should fear, is it? I mean, among other things, hypothermia can be a problem. What else should we be, concerned about health-wise during these floods?
So you have established a very robust introduction looking at the health impact of flood. And you know that flood is associated with a lot of impact in the loss of livelihood, in the loss of shelter, in the loss of also infrastructure that includes health. And I'm quite happy that you have established by saying that there are other diseases that are associated with flood, which cholera is among them. Beyond cholera, we have issues that are water-related diseases, such as typhoid fever, diseases such as also gastroenteritis, because once there is a flood, it disrupts what we call the wash infrastructure. It disrupts the water sanitation and hygiene infrastructure. So potable water that is assumed or seems to be very potable, get contaminated with wastewater as a result of flood. So there are a lot of diseases that are associated with this, most especially the waterborne diseases. But beyond the waterborne diseases, there are diseases that are associated with flood, that the flood itself becomes the breeding ground for the multiplication, the habitation and multiplication of most vectors. For example, malaria. So malaria becomes quite endemic in flood areas. You have issues of chikungunya viruses, issues of Zika viruses, diseases that are associated with mosquito. You know that flood also serves as a breeding ground because the water becomes stagnant, and so they become a breeding site for mosquitoes. So beyond the cholera that we see, there are also vector-borne diseases, most especially that are associated with mosquitoes.
This is the first time I'm hearing of a possibility of Zika virus in these parts. But moving on, there are other health concerns which are not quite disease-related, I understand. One of them could be hypothermia. Tell us a bit more about non-disease health concerns.
Okay, so there are actually issues that are not related to communicable diseases.
That's right.
Not only limited to, so we have the non-communicable diseases and other associated health conditions that are associated with flood. For example, one of the post-intervention, Mary, let me also draw your attention to these national needs that I've seen. When you invited me to the studio to speak about this, I was looking for a dashboard where it could speak to data, it could speak to displacement metrics. How many farmlands were affected in what region? How many households were affected? How many people were displaced in terms of numbers? How many casualties do we have in terms of number? I did not see any national dashboard that speaks to that. Only the dashboard that I saw speaking to this are UN dashboards. It calls for a serious concern. So even the issues that you are raising now about hypothermia, about issues that are non-communicable in nature, the reason why I'm bringing this as a national need is because a lot of people that are displaced need actually psychosocial support. And so you need to also know in terms of number, how many of them need this psychosocial support. Because the flood comes with a lot of anxiety. It also comes with a lot of depression as a result of loss of livelihoods. So you can find issues around psychosocial issues of depression, issues of even malnutrition. These are issues. You can also find issues of anxiety that are associated. They are not infectious in nature, but they have a lot of impact. They are also referred to as social determinants and predictors in flood endemic areas. So we as a country, we need to also not focus on the outbreak of infectious diseases, but we also need to look at also social determinants of diseases that are predictors and drivers of diseases of non-communicable origins.
So not having a dashboard, could that mean that there are some of these social determinants that will not be catered to, that will go unnoticed and people will continue to suffer?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm quite privileged to serve in Maiduguri, so I also understand the terrain. I have also supported as an national and international consultants to most of the UN organizations, like the International Organization for Migration, IOM, and other UN agencies. So I also understand the terrain. You know that Maiduguri is bedeviled with the issues of insecurity. People have not yet come out from the trauma of insecurity as a result of Boko Haram, issues of insecurity as a result of bandits, and all what have you. Now, the Governor Zulum also, some few months ago, returned back people within the IDPs to their ancestral lands, and then here comes the flood. So people have not yet come out from the depression, from the anxiety, from the social trauma of the insecurity. Now we are bedeviled with flood. And then a lot of the IDP camps have been activated to also serve as IDP camps for displaced persons. So we need to also look at their health status, their mental health status, which they are not being captured in most of our national dashboards. We need a lot to do. I thought maybe the issue of flood in Borno, in Maiduguri, Borno State, should also serve as a lessons for us. But we live in a country that we don't learn from lessons with a kind of a fragile health infrastructure. By now, Mary, we should be able to know the number of health centers that are affected. We should be able to know the number of health commodities that are affected, that have been destroyed. I heard from the Minister of Health and Social Welfare how 2 million doses of vaccines were affected, how drugs were affected, and all what have you. In terms of numerical strength, we should be able to know the number of houses that are affected. But we live in a country that we don't even have house number. Mary, is just that maybe you are from Lagos where things are organized, houses are well numbered, streets are well numbered. But when you come down to other parts of the countries, issues of planning and urban planning. But there is also a concept of urban health planning that is quite new in our terrain, that we, in terms of planning of houses. Of course, you know that during COVID and other infectious diseases that are airborne, they will tell you that to avoid overcrowding. When it comes to issues of flood, issues of cholera, you hear people saying that, okay, your drainages has to be clean, you need to dispose your waste. They are all part of urban health planning. And so if you don't plan your urban settlements, your urban cities with a view of issues forecast like flood in the future, that it will come, and then a lot of health problems will emanate from that, then we have not yet planned. So I hope that the Borno State experiences, other states will actually learn from it. Houses that are built on water bands, blockage of drainages, and all what of it. Those are the things that we need. But what is quite important is that we're in a 21st century where it is data-driven, and which is a knowledge-based economy. We should be able to speak to data. Somebody from NIMA was in your station yesterday, and he was talking about indices on, understanding why a helicopter of NEMA is not being used for rescue mission. Like that. And so by now, and then we don't even have statistics of number of households, number of hospitals, number of health establishments that have been disrupted. These are issues that we should be able to have.
You've touched on a very important point, which I want you to address, that vaccines were destroyed. So what are people doing about access to facilities and access to health centers? Because I'm sure a lot of people will need serious medical attention.
Absolutely.
And maybe some people are on regular drugs and they can't access them anymore.
Absolutely. So I was on an international dashboard following the situational reports, and I also have seen that how emergency health modular clinics, modular health centers have been established in IDP camps. I'm quite happy that the Minister of Health says that there are deployments of essential drugs, commodities, anti-malaria drugs, vaccines. Within the span of about 2 to 3 days ago, 100 of children were given birth by mothers that were pregnant, and the flood actually interrupted. So there are a lot of people, and most of these children that were given birth, they also need vaccines. There are children that got vaccines that they needed to do a follow-up to complete their doses, but because the flood has interrupted a lot of health infrastructure. So emergency health infrastructures are being built that are modular in nature, but most of them, they are mobile. I've seen a lot of them within IDP camps that are mobile. If we have a database of how many people live in a city, what is their house addresses, maybe how many of them have been evacuated to camps, how many of them in camps needed vaccines, those are the kind of data that helps us in planning in the now and also in the post-flood era. Because during the post-flood era, we will have a lot of issues to contend with, a lot of issues of rebuilding health infrastructure, water sanitation and hygiene infrastructure, building up livelihoods. These are predicated on data. You want to share palliatives, you want to share food items to people. How many people were being affected? You want to see how you can bring people out of their mental depression status. How many of them have been queried to have one form or the other of mental issues that needed to be addressed? Data speaks. And so there is a need for us to have an emergency data dashboard. Not speaking only to cholera, it can also speak to other things, other natural disasters like earthquake, other natural disasters like fire outbreak, which are, it can be man-made or it can be natural. But we are also blessed in this part of the world that it is also only flood that we are contending with. You hear of typhoons in Japan, in other countries, they speak to the number of casualties. If you have agencies in Nigeria, how many people were injured in Maiduguri, how many people are dead, there will be no statistics to speak to. So I'm calling on the national agencies that are responsible for emergencies and rescue missions and disaster management to come up with a national dashboard that speaks to data.
Okay, on that point, we'll take a short break. Please stay with us while we take this short break. Meet us on the other side. Welcome back. We're talking about the health implications of the floods in northern Nigeria. If you have questions on the topic, you can call 0808-054-2233. You can also send a message on X at CTV_Mary A, or send me email to moalale@channelstv.com. NIMET gave warnings long ago, several months perhaps, about this flood, this deluge of water that we are seeing, perhaps the breaking of the dam multiplied the effect. But 30 years ago, we were told a similar thing happened in Borno State. As a public health expert, what is your advice so that this doesn't happen again? Should they do something different about the dam? Repair it? Should there be a different type of way of building or situating houses? What can they do? Because it's incredible that this thing happened 30 years ago and it's like we were sitting ducks all over again.
So thank you. I think that's quite a valid question that you have asked. And then we need to do a lot of conversation, national conversation and international conversation around that. I'm quite happy that you said that NIMED gave a warning. The warning that NIMED gave
Dr.
was
Ishaku,
a warning about flood.
Can you pause
Yes.
on your thought? Pause on that thought. We'll continue. But let's take this call from Bolaji in Ogun State. Hello, Bolaji. What's your question?
Good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon.
All this flood, does it cause damage to human health or what? Flood.
Okay. I'll let the doctor handle that. She's asking if it causes damage or effects on health. We can just quickly run through that.
Those were the conversations. Yeah, those were the conversations we have been having. Abolaji, I think you can also follow the conversation through. It also affects health, both mental health, social health, and also all facets of health. Mary, you asked a very valid question about that. The warnings that NIMED will give you are flood warnings. They do not also give us warnings about our dams. So I was speaking to one of the engineers yesterday that is a top-ranking member of the Nigerian Society for Engineers. I asked him, what are the qualities, what are the lifespans of our dams? Can we have a national dialogue about that? What are the qualities? What are the lifespan of our bridges? You find out that just within a short period of time, as a result of flood, our bridges will collapse. Our dams will collapse. And so we need to have a national audit on the quality of our dams, the lifespan of our dams, and also the lifespan of our bridges across the country. In a civilized climate, you can even see that they will tell you that even stadium where people play football expires. And that's why they build new stadiums. Because, so what is the lifespan of our dams? We need to also ask those questions. If we have been having periodic floods and livelihood have been disrupted, health facilities have been, infrastructure have been, affected, can we have a strategic plan to build more dams that are harvester dams in the future? Can we have dams, harvesters, that should be able to, we should not experience flood as a result of outburst of dams. Once there are outbursts, harvesters should be able to harvest these waters, and these waters can be used for irrigation farming.
Let me pause you again.
During dry season.
Let me pause you again briefly to take this call from Chidi. Hello, Chidi. What do we have from you?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to the doctor.
Go ahead with your
there?
question. Yes, we can hear you.
As I condole with the government and people of Borno State over this dastardly act and incident, I want to ask the doctor, is the federal government and in collaboration with the state government and other relevant agencies doing to mitigate such an occurrence in the near future, and going by the projections of the NIMET and such other agencies? Thank you very much. And God.
Thank you very much, Chidi. Doctor, yes. Do we have something, in line with Chidi's question, do we have something like a federal government or national disaster readiness plan, natural disaster readiness plan in place to implement? What is the federal government doing?
Yeah, we have a lot of plans that does with disasters, but you know that we have the plans on paper. We don't have the plans being implemented. I was also querying. I went through about 30 states yesterday to look at their budgets. Mary, there is no any budget that any state in Nigeria within the 30 states that I was able to lay my hands on their budget that budgeted for emergencies. Emergencies like disaster, be it man-made or be it disaster, natural disaster. So those are the kind of conversations. How can we have a government at subnational level that do not plan for the future, that do not plan for issues like floods, that have to wait for disaster to happen to actually wait for people for donations? So I think the Borno experience is going to actually bring to the national discourse about issues, how we also need to also plan for the future. I like the conversation issues, the submission of Chidi. We need, and the questions and the plans that you brought forward about the national, disaster management response and readiness plan. Most of Nigeria, we have beautiful plans on paper. You go to a lot of our archives, you see these plans, either adopted plans or plans that have been on the shelf. But when it comes to implementation, most of these plans are actually being implemented at the national level. They are not being implemented at subnational levels. We expect every state should have a national plan, a state plan for disaster management and also for rescue missions and also plans for responses.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Or be it health.
Let me ask you this. NIMET is predicting a second peak of rain in the southwest. That means we could possibly have floods. Maybe not on the level of Borno State, but who knows, maybe on that level. Because they have said that climate change is contributing every year to worse and worse conditions. You mentioned typhoons and tornadoes, cyclones in other areas. But who says climate change is not bringing that closer to us? What should we be doing in the South? Should we, to escape these floods? And if the floods do happen, what's to be done?
Actually, states like Lagos, by default, you should expect flood. Flood around the waterborne riverine cities. Lagos is like a state in a state. It's like a country in a country. So you should expect around even Lekki, around Ikeja part, because most of the lands that were used for housing and for shelter were reclaimed from the waterborne. So you shall expect that. And other states in the southwest, like Ogun, part of Oyo State, you should expect flood. Now, the expectation is that what is our readiness in terms of plan to rescue? What is our readiness? What is our plan in terms of mitigating future occurrence? Is it possible for this government of these states within the southwest to build harvesters? I was privileged to do my postgraduate studies in the Netherlands. I hope you know that Netherlands is the only country below sea level.
Definitely.
That's why a Dutchman will tell you that God created the world, but a Dutchman created Netherlands, created Holland. Is a country below sea level, and the whole country is on water. It's only in Netherlands that they will tell you that the water will rise a certain level and it will come down. They have harvesters everywhere. Yet, Netherlands has never experienced floods. They deploy their resources in terms of research and development. they deploy their resources in terms of innovation and technology to mitigate floods. Time has come for us to deploy. Instead of getting these donations, relief materials, why can't we deploy resources in terms of doing research to understand mitigating futuristic plans that we will have at, and also deploy resources to build harvesters. I was privileged to stay in one of the southern part coast of the Netherlands called the Rotterdam. They have harvesters. Once the water reaches certain level, the harvesters collect the water. You cannot experience dry and rainy season in the Netherlands because during dry season, the water from the harvesters are being pulled out into the main rivers, main tributaries. So we need to employ technology to be able to have a forecast into the future.
Okay, Doctor, I'm afraid we have to stop there. These are all very good ideas.
Countries have deployed. But lastly, Mary, my condolences to the government of Borno State and to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We hope that this does not happen again after 30 years again, just like you mentioned, and we have read. We hope that these natural disasters will plan for them and then the casualties will be minimized. Thank you for the platform.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. We do hope we are going to learn from these lessons and at least start with preventing floods in the Southwest this year. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sir. And thank you, viewers, for being there.
Me.
Thank you, Bolaji, and thank you, Chidi, for your wonderful questions. Every one of you, have a wonderful day in spite of the trouble, and stay safe. I am Mary Alale Yusuf.